I wanted to look at overcoming adversity. And I've done, I guess, some similar sermons. I did a sermon last time we had a baptism. I did a sermon about we can change, because that's all a part about baptism. We can change. We can overcome the way that we are. I did a sermon called Overcoming Anxiety. And so that not to be confused with adversity, because there's a big difference in what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to look at adversity. And I kind of wrote this before what happened last night. And so what I'm going to describe as adversity, I think we've kind of seen some of that if we were watching the news or been aware of what's going on in the world about adversity. So some synonyms for adversity are misfortune, ill luck, bad luck, trouble, difficulty, hardship, distress, disaster, suffering, affliction, sorrow, misery, tribulation, woe, pain, and trauma. So I think we've all experienced that. And we saw that again. We saw it last night. I mean, when I watched, you were talking about the newscast. When I watched it, it's hard for me, my eyes, not to tear up from what was happening, and because it was when they do the live coverage and things are happening like that, it touches you because those things, that's terrible. When things like that happen, and those are things that we all go through. That we all agreed on that we all at some point in our lives at some time. Maybe not to that degree, and we count our blessings that we maybe not have suffered to that degree. But we do have, shootings in our country pretty regularly. Every week there's a shooting somewhere, mass shooting, so things do happen. So we all have adversity. We all have all problems that we go through. The biggest one, and many of you know, the biggest one I had was now 12 years ago, was cancer. I had cancer 12 years ago. And that for me was and here's the thing, I gave a sermon probably like a couple of months before that, talking about how great my life was and praising God and thanking God for everything. And I remember that. I did that sermon about how wonderful things are. I'm glad I'm keeping God's law, doing all that stuff. And then a few months later, I had just something this big in my chest, and they had to go in and with a saw or whatever I wouldn't wait, but whatever they had to open me up. Like a couple of days later, they're like, open you up on the table and pull out that and most of one of my lungs. And so my life changed after that, because there's chemotherapy, there's all kinds of things that go with cancer, and that was, adversity. And I was younger, about 33, so. And again, maybe a lot of us have gone through things like that. I know we have people have had open heart surgeries, same type of surgery as that. We've had illnesses. Good to see Mickey here, has some adversity with the shingles, and I know that's so. There's all kinds of things that we go through to lesser or greater degrees, and again, and what I had cannot compare to what we witnessed last night. It was just, so that's not even there, but we do experience those things. So I want to look at James chapter 1. James chapter 1. And in James chapter 1, we'll look at verse 2. And he says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." That's interesting. He says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. So joy is not something we experience during trials, is it? I don't think there was any joy in what we were watching last night. There's any joy when we have pain or suffering. But he's saying consider it joy like when you wrecked your car. You ever had a car wreck? I've wrecked my car. But does that make sense? Consider it, no. I mean, you don't have joy when you wreck your car, or especially if you're injured or hurt, or we've people we've known who we've lost friends and family from those kind of things. But he says, consider it joy if you lose your job. Or consider it joy if you got cancer. Or consider it joy if you lost your home. Because one thing I know from when I had cancer is that the first time I saw the bill, anybody had medical expenses and they sent a bill to my house and opened, oh, hey, the bill from the insurance got that. So I open up the thing, look in there, it's like $30-something thousand. Oh boy, that's a lot of money. You got to talk to the insurance company about it. But so things like that, when people experience problems, more problems happen from the problems. You could have financial problems. You could lose your home because you're sick and can't pay, you can't work. But he says, consider it joy. Have y'all ever heard of the second law of thermodynamics? Some of y'all have heard of the second law of thermodynamics. I'm going to tell you what it is, and then we'll tell you in English what it is. Okay. All right, so second law of thermodynamics is in any cyclic process, the entropy will either increase or remain the same. All right, now in English. So in English, this means that things in our universe, the way things are, they naturally go from a state of order to disorder. Unless you add energy, right, you can put some energy into it, but in a system that's closed and no energy is coming into it, right, and in the universe, you can consider the universe that way. If no energy is added in, things go to a state of disorder. Example, have you ever organized a closet? Okay, organize a closet. Or a garage is even worse. Or you ever organize a garage, and they sell a lot of devices for organizing closets. You can go online. I say, I want to look, how do you organize a closet? You got little things, you put your shoes on and hang up stuff, and you got boxes and things, you get it in there. And you can organize a closet really well. Earlier this year, or maybe last year, West White, we got some shelves for this closet back here, where we're doing the food drive, and there's food in there, and some of the folks here, we got together and it was a mess. The closet was a mess, so we put some energy into it, and we organized the closet. And then a couple weeks ago, me and Wes were in there, and we were looking around, and there was entropy. There was disorder, because if you ever organize something, if you don't keep putting energy into it, it kind of, and again, I'm probably one of the main reasons why it's that way, I don't know, but things start to get into disorder. You can look in there, and as we put, and again, we want to make it disorder, put some more cans of food in there for the food drive, but it's fine if we load it up full of food to help somebody else, but closets tend to, go to a state of disorder. My sock drawer. So last year I got a bunch. I said I'm tired of these nasty socks I got. I'm gonna go get some all new socks. So I got all new socks, and I had a sock. I said I want me a sock drawer, and you roll them up, and I got all my socks organized in my sock drawer. That's the way you got it. So you're right. So that's the way it starts. So this morning I'm pulling out socks, and I'm like saying, well, does this match this? I guess that's at least they're the same color. I guess that'd go. So in other words, that drawer had fallen into disarray because I didn't put any energy into it. That's the way the universe works. You ever bought a new car, or had a car, or bought a car? I bought a new car last year, and so when I buy something new, right? When I buy something new, I like to keep it as close to new as possible. That's just the way I want it to stay looking new and clean, and so I do my best to vacuum it out and clean and stuff. But what happens when you buy a new car? Somebody will, and I'll make a point. I want to park in the parking lot away, so somebody won't open their door up into it. I'm going to park, it's brand new. I'm going to park it here. There's spaces. Somebody will pull up beside you, and they'll open their door into your car, and there's a little ding starts happening, or you ride on the road, and maybe a rock comes up and hits the side or something like that. And so I had my new car that I have out there, and then a couple of months later, it was at the airport when I was gone, and there was a hailstorm. And so I said, and my goal is I want to keep this as new looking as possible. I'm looking, there's all these dents and stuff like that. And so, all right, we'll get the insurance people. There's a place right behind here. They pushed it all out and stuff like that. But no matter whatever you do to a car, it still looks like it's 1 year old. It doesn't matter. And in 4 years from now, the car is going to look 4 years old, because that's the way my other car looked, and so on and so on. And there will be dents, and there will be bangs, rocks will hit it. Things tend to go to a state of disorder. And our bodies are that way as well. All right, our bodies are that way. I think we reach a pinnacle maybe in our 20s. I don't know. Cause I looked at, because I think I've said this before, but I looked at a picture of myself in my 20s and I'm jealous of myself. I say, because, and then we kind of, because that's the way it is. Things will wear out because we're physical human beings. But that's the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. We're going to go back to James. Let's go to Romans 8. Romans 8. I'll explain my thinking. Romans 8 and verse 18. Romans 8 verse 18 says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." That's interesting. So it's kind of same thoughts as what we had back there. We had with James. Paul's thinking, well, the sufferings of this time aren't worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed within us. It says, "For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of the corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God." So the creation is subjected to futility. So that's the second law of thermodynamics. Before anybody knew what it was right there in the Bible. The second law of thermodynamics. Kind of the same thing as Murphy's Law. You know the Murphy's Law? What is Murphy's Law? Yeah, anything that can go wrong will go wrong is Murphy's Law. And a few weeks ago, this is what got me thinking about this subject, experienced it with the microphone here at the very last minute before service started, because we had tested the microphones and had everything running like a day before, and everything's running right. But right when service started, the microphone decided not to work anymore. So that's the way things are. Things will break down, or things will not always go as planned, and actually they don't. I mean, I like to plan my life. I like to organize and have goals and stuff. But guess what? Nothing ever goes as planned, because that's part of entropy. It's part of the life that we have. So continue reading verse 22 here. It says, "For we know the whole creation," right? All of creation, all of the universe, "groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. For we were saved in this hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with perseverance." So things are in decay. When the kingdom of God comes and we're part of the kingdom of God, things are going to be different. The universe is going to be changed. It's going to be brought back to a perfect. Things then won't fall apart. They won't decay. But we got to wait for it. He says, wait for that time with perseverance. And so to me, I don't know about you, but it seems to indicate that this is part of the plan. This is part of the plan of God. It's not a detour, and it's not a flaw. So many people will use suffering and problems, even what happened last night, or what's happening today. There's stuff all around the world we don't even know about. Things happen terrible. People try to use that as a way to disprove God. You ever hear people say that? As part of what I do, I research a lot of people who have left the Church of God and see why did they leave. And a lot of the reasons that people who left the Church of God they give is because they don't understand suffering. Things happen, and they want to blame God, or they, and so they become atheists, and they lose belief. And it's actually the opposite. Right? The second law of thermodynamics, the fact that things fall apart, the reason things decay is brilliant, part of God's plan. Part of God's plan. Because what is God doing? God is reproducing himself. God is making mankind into his children, and we're being made into his likeness. And he is now creating his character in us. And so it's all part of, it has to be that way for us to be able to choose God, for us to be able to develop character. It has to be the way it is. And it has to be the fact that I could get out of here and I can go down somewhere, I can go into the mall, and I can run up to somebody and just hit them in the face. I could do that. And then I'll probably go to jail for assault. And if I hit them hard enough, it might hurt them. They make some blood. I don't know if I can hit that hard, but I don't hit people. But I could do that, and God's not going to stop me. God's not going to stop me from going out and doing that because I have the free will to choose him or not choose him. And sometimes my free will may mess up you or you. And a lot of times that's what happens, is that we, because of the way it is, the perfect way it is, because we are developing character, we are in a place where we can learn and change and grow and be like God, is it has to be this way. There is that decay. There is that chance that those things can happen. So back to Hebrews. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10. Hebrews 2:10 says, "For it was fitting for him, for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings." So it's fitting for God, whom are all things and through all things, in bringing many sons to glory, right? The whole plan, that's hopefully us, bringing us to glory, to make the captain of their salvation, he was perfect through sufferings. Now, again, I may not, maybe I need to get Vance to come explain that right there, but I may not be able to explain that fully. Think about that a lot. But what I do know, if Christ was made perfect through sufferings, how do you think he is going to do it with us? Right? If Christ is made perfect through sufferings, and he's making us perfect, is that not part of the plan? Back to James 1. Back to James 1 where we started. James chapter 1, verse 2. It says, "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into various trials." Why is it joyful? Again, it's probably not joy at the time, but I am glad now that I had that experience, that I had cancer, because it changed who I was. It changed me from who I was to be a better person by experiencing that in my life, to be closer to God, to be able to empathize with folks, to all types of things that did for me, that I know that I wouldn't trade it now. I consider it joyful that I experienced that suffering. He says it is it's joy that he's perfecting. That's verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. The testing of your faith produces patience. And again, patience is the fruit of God's Spirit. And guess what patience doesn't come from? Patience doesn't come from an easy life, does it? If every time that I went to go, get my driver's license renewed, and they're like, "Jeffrey, good to see you. Come up to the front of the line, and there you go, and you're out of here." No, that doesn't happen. Or if I go to the bank or whatever, patience doesn't come from an easy life. If God made everything easy for us, right? If that's what they try to argue, why is God not intervening? Why is God not doing everything for us and making this thing perfect? If God does not do, if God does everything for us, we can't develop this. It's part of the plan to actually develop these things through His Spirit, patience. And adversity produces patience. Verse 4, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." It says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." Now, question, y'all have read that before? Has anybody ever asked for wisdom? I read about Solomon. I read about this. I said, I want to ask for some wisdom. And I've got it. But it comes through what happens. It comes through experience. It comes through the things that happen in our lives. So you will get wisdom, but it's not going to be easy. Never was meant to be easy. So now that I've shown you, I guess, that adversity is a joyful thing. Well, no. But that's what it's, it's a joyful thing. What do we do, right? The title is, what do we do how do we overcome adversity? Well, let's look at Job. We're going to look at Job. I'm not going to go through a lot of Job. I know a lot of people have covered Job. And there's a lot of aspects about the book of Job. I'm just going to look at one aspect, and it's a simple one, because I'm a simple-minded person. So I'm going to look at one simple aspect of Job, and it's a really great thing about overcoming adversity. And we think of bad days. Have you ever had a bad day? I mean, we had a bad day for the world yesterday, and many people today are having bad days. People have bad days all the time. This right here was a bad day for Job, and we're just going to read the highlights. Job 1, verse 13. So we're writing in this. Job 1:13. So now there was a day when the sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them. When the Sabeans raided them and took them away, indeed they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. So that's bad enough. But see, while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven, I guess he's talking about lightning, and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 17, while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. So we have tragedy from natural, people raiding. There's everything's covered here, right? All types of circumstances, and this all happened in one bad day. In verse 18, while he was still speaking, another also came. Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. And it fell on the young people, and they are dead, and I've escaped to tell you. And that's terrible. And again, I don't think I've ever had anything like that. I pray that I don't. And again, as we look at it, there's probably ways to avoid that. We'll look at that later. But then, verse 20, Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. Did he consider it joy? I mean, it's not joyful, but he worshipped after this. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Because he understood something, I think. He understood something. And that's one thing we all have to realize, that this life that we have, that we're experiencing, is wonderful. God gave you life. Because there's another option, you could have never existed. He gave you a life created for the very purpose, everything created for the very purpose, so that you could be transformed into a child of God. That's it. And so I think Job knew this. And even when we have, and this is the worst tragedy, he said, naked I shall return. The Lord gave, the Lord taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin nor towards God would wrong. And so that's terrible. But on the other side of this, now we're going to go to the very end of the book. And this is the thing to remember. And I think this is probably one of the major points of the book of Job, is that at the end of all the suffering, and even suffering to himself and all that he goes through, he's better off than when he started. That's what's one of the things. It says he's better off than when he started. Job 42, verse 12 says, now, again, all the things he went through, and he understood it and praised God that God gave, God takes away. After all of this, verse Job 42, verse 12 says, now the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. He talks about his sheep, his camels, his oxen. Verse 13, he had 7 sons, 3 daughters. In verse 15 it says, in all the land were found no woman so beautiful as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers. And 16 says, and this Job lived 140 years and saw his children and grandchildren for 4 generations. So Job died old and full of days. And so I think, for me, I see that the thing is, even though you will have adversity, and I think the book of Job is there because we're all like Job in some degree. We all will experience something like that in some degree, and we will all maybe question or try to figure out what's going on, or could lose faith. But we all have to what? Persevere. Persevere. Because too many people, including Christians, a lot of Christians, let adversity get the best of them. Something happens, can't explain it. And there's, losing family is one of the worst things that could ever happen, or losing children, small children. And that's not joyful. But the thing is to never lose faith. Never lose faith, no matter what happens. Never give up, no matter what happens in your life. That's the story of Job. He didn't give up. Never lose faith, because God has a master plan that is going to. It's there for that reason. Psalm 34. Psalm 34, verse 17. Psalm 34:17 says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears, and delivers them out of all their troubles. That's what he says. So even though you have troubles, you experience troubles or pain or suffering, the righteous will cry out, and the Lord will deliver us out of what? All of our troubles. It says, the Lord is near to those who have a broken heart, and save such have a contrite spirit. Right? God is close to us when we're brokenhearted. And he says, 19, many are the afflictions of the righteous. I'm just reading what it says, right? Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. If that's not enough for you, 2 Corinthians 4:8. Just a couple of verses here. In 2 Corinthians 4:8 it says, we are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. Verse 10, always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. So one of the major parts of overcoming adversity is no matter how bad it gets, no matter what happens, never, ever give up. Have y'all ever heard of a man named Glenn Cunningham? So I figured Charles would have heard of him, but Glenn Cunningham. So if you know the story of Glenn Cunningham, probably heard this. I got this, and I've known the story of Glenn Cunningham since I had cancer, because somebody told it to me. And this was compiled by a guy named Bert Dubin. So I'm going to be reading and kind of paraphrasing what he wrote, because he put it together pretty well. But the story of Glenn Cunningham, never give up. So this happened probably 100 years ago or so, now, or 80, 90 years ago. And there was a little country schoolhouse that was heated by an old-fashioned pot-bellied coal stove. And so Glenn Cunningham was 8 years old, and his job was to come into school early every morning, and he would start the fire. And he would use kerosene to start the fire and warm the room up before his teacher and the classmates would arrive. So this 8-year-old, we don't give 8-year-olds that kind of responsibility now, do we? But 8-year-old kid gets up early, heads to the schoolhouse, and gets it all heated up for everyone. And so one morning, someone had replaced the kerosene with gasoline. And so he did his normal routine. And so what? The schoolhouse was in flames. The class and teacher arrived as the place was burning down. And Glenn was inside. His 13-year-old brother was inside. His 13-year-old brother didn't make it out. His brother died in the schoolhouse as it burnt down. And Glenn, after his brother had died, and in the flames, he had major burns over like the lower half of his body. He was completely burnt on the lower half of his body, and he was taken to a nearby hospital. And so from his bed, he heard the doctor talking to his mother, and the doctor told the mother that her son would surely die, which, that's what he's saying. He's going to die. And she said it's probably a good thing because he's going to be burnt the rest of his life, and that's not a way to live for a little 8-year-old boy. 8-year-old, 8, burnt. I mean, imagine that. But he didn't want to die. Glenn made up his mind that he would survive, and to the amazement of everyone, he survived. He got out of the hospital. And since the fire had destroyed so much of his flesh and the lower parts of his body, he was. They said he was doomed, right, to be crippled and no longer use his limbs. Right, he would never walk again, ever, for the rest of his life. And his mother wouldn't let him amputate, though. They wanted to amputate him. But there's one day that he made up his mind, and this is probably from his stories and what people said, that he was not going to be crippled, that he was going to walk. Even though he had no motor ability, he had this, imagine, thin, scarred legs, haven't moved for whatever, burnt, dangling, lifeless, lost his brother. And he was released from the hospital, and they would put him into a wheelchair, and his mother would wheel him out every day into the yard to get some fresh air. And so one day he was sitting there, he actually got out of the wheelchair and drew himself onto the ground and dragged his legs behind him and pulled himself up to a white picket fence on their lot. And with effort, he pulled himself up onto that fence. And then stake by stake, as he went along the fence, he dragged himself along the fence. He was resolved that he would walk. And so he would do this every day. He would go out there, his mom would push him out, he'd fall out, crawl, get up there, and slowly train his legs to walk. And so, and his persistence, what do you think happened? He was able to walk again. And then he was able to run. And he would run to school, he would run everywhere. So I don't know if you remember the movie Forrest Gump. The movie Forrest Gump is based upon his story somewhat. The part of Forrest Gump where Forrest Gump's running everywhere, they got it from Glenn Cunningham. So he was running everywhere because he could run again. He could run. And they would know Glenn was coming, and they called him, his nickname was the Kansas Flyer. So in February 1934, and this was years later when he was an adult, in New York City's Madison Square Garden, Glenn Cunningham, who was not expected to actually survive, right? They wanted to cut off his legs. They just say he ain't going to walk. Never thought the man could run. He ran the mile in 4 minutes and 8 seconds. And at that time, that was the world record. The world record. And so his favorite scripture was this. So we're going to go through his favorite scripture. And it's in Isaiah 40:31. It's one of my favorite scriptures as well. Isaiah 40:31. It says, but those who wait on the Lord, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That's so good, I'm going to read it again. Because this is important, right? Those who wait on the Lord, never give up, never quit, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That was Glenn's favorite verse for a reason. Never quit. 2 Corinthians 12. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7. Second Corinthians 12, verse 7, we hear about Paul, who, guess what, dealt with adversity. We thought we read a little bit about it earlier. In 2 Corinthians 12, he talks about some adversity that he had. Verse 7, he says, unless I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations. Because again, Paul was gifted. He wrote a lot of the Bible, was a tremendous man, we're grateful for all the things he did for the church of God. He said, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. I've heard some people say that it was his eyesight. I don't believe that. I believe it was something even more, eyesight, I mean, everybody's eyesight's bad. It was something a lot worse. I don't know exactly what it was, but something physical, something that was really there bothering him. And he says, concerning this thing, whatever it was, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. 3 times. And I know when Christ, before he went to in the garden, before he was to be crucified, he asked God, what, 3 times? If it's your will, take this away from me. But he went through it. He went through it for us, and we are super grateful for that. But he says, right, 3 times he asked they might depart from me, and he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. My strength is made perfect in weakness. So when I say this is all part of the plan, it's all how God works. It's the part of the plan. This is the way God works. That God, he shows his strength when we're weakest. And therefore, most gladly, I will boast my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. He says, therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities and reproaches and needs and persecutions and distress. For Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Don't quit. All right, so that's the first thing. So this is a simple sermon. First thing, don't quit. Second thing, we got two things about overcoming adversity. And the second thing for me is learn from our mistakes and learn from others' mistakes. And there's a good way to do that. And I think we all know that, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Learn from our mistakes and others' mistakes, and don't repeat them. Proverbs 18:2. And I'm just going to quote this. You don't have to turn there. Proverbs 18:2 says, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only expressing his opinion. And I've expressed my opinion too many times. But opinion doesn't matter with God, right? It's the understanding that what comes from his word. I can have my opinions about all kinds of things, but guess what? God's word always works. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us to prove all things and hold fast that which is good. And we have to face the truth, and that many times our own actions, right, because I could go punch somebody and I would be in trouble, our own actions produce adversity. Are we agreed on that? That things that we do in our lives, we can't say, oh, it's God's fault or someone else's fault. Guess what? It's my fault. Example, poor financial planning, wasting money. That will lead to a bunch of hurt. Can't do that. Eating poorly, bad health. Don't follow God's health laws. I looked up when I was studying this. I want to look up God's health laws. Did a little quick Google search and found a little guy had listed all the health laws. Hey, that's good stuff. All stuff. There's a lot of good guidelines in the Bible about health, but he left off one of the most important, the clean, unclean, clean meat. So it must, he must not have considered that. But that's very important. Those things are important. And here's an example, and I'll go to my cancer that I had. Because this is an example of me learning something. Maybe I can share that. I don't put any faith in medical science. And you're like, what? Why? Because I trust that it works. Because this is something that it works or it doesn't work. So if I have a pain in my head, I can take a Tylenol. I have to put no faith in it whatsoever, and that Tylenol will work for me. I put no faith into what the doctor did, and there's odds, right? There's like 90%. I wouldn't, 10% may not make it, but there's odds and stuff. But you don't have to put faith in that. It just works or it doesn't work. They just do. But what I do put my faith in is Christ. right? So there's things that we can do for ourselves that just work, and we should not ignore those at all, but we have to put our faith in Christ. And we don't need to put our things in things that require us to have faith other than what God says. And there's a lot of that in our culture, where people will want you to put your faith in something else other than God's Word or His laws or what's in there. And I could list them, but I'm not going to list things and stuff. But I'm going to give them a couple examples. Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18, we're going to look at just some things that, in the world here. Deuteronomy 18, verse 10 says, "There shall not be found any among you who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer." So these are people of other religions who, for whatever reasons, they say, we can help you out. We can help you with witchcraft. We can help you with soothsaying. And it can be any religion, right? There's all types of religions out there. And guess what? All religions are wrong. God is right. And if somebody says, put your faith in this, no matter what it is, and this is what was happening there, and there's other specifics now, and not Jesus, there could be problems. He says, for all who do these things are an abomination to the Lord. So he warns against this. He warns against idolatry. Jeremiah 10. We all know Jeremiah 10. Jeremiah 10, verse 2. Says, "Thus says the Lord, do not learn the way of the Gentiles." Don't learn the way of the world. The way of the world it does not work. "Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are futile." And he gives one of the customs. And some people say it is a Christmas tree. It's not really a Christmas tree, but it's similar. "For one cuts the tree from the forest, the work of the hand of the workman with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it will not topple. They are upright like a palm tree, and they cannot speak. They must be carried, because they cannot go by themselves." Right? So idols, false worship. He said, this is the way of the Gentiles. They have all this way. And he says, do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor they can do any good. Right? They're useless. The ways of the world is useless. So much in the world, the culture, does not work. Right? So what we saw, when somebody walks into a restaurant and yells Allah Akbar, or they go into a concert hall and they yell that and they kill people, is because they're following Satan's ways. Right? That is not, I mean, and that's all religions that are wrong. And that right there causes problems, because they're not following what God does. They're following the false ways. And those false religions, no matter what they are, they cause adversity in to different degrees. They're useless. And God says, don't be afraid of them. Do not be afraid of them. Because there's great evidence of what works in God's Word. His laws, because I know by keeping God's laws, I generally avoid a lot of problems. Right? I mean, that's one of the things. When I learned to keep God's laws and not do my own way or my own opinion or follow the ways of the world or the false religions, you can avoid a lot of hurt by doing those things. And there's great evidence that God's laws, God's Word, it works. Where's the evidence? The evidence is in here. I can talk to all y'all. The evidence is in us, of the Holy Spirit working in us, Jesus Christ working in us, changing our lives. Great evidence for Christianity. There's no evidence for any of these other garbage that's out there. There's evidence that what it does wrong, and I can point it out all day long. And this is not my opinion, right? That made me a fool like I read earlier. This is the facts from your Bible. So it says, avoid the ways of the Gentiles. If any, and I think I've mentioned this before, a lot of people mention this, but if only one of God's 10 commandments were kept, right? Wouldn't that be great? If we just said, we're just all going to not steal anymore. There'd be a lot of people out of business for security cameras and locks, and it would be great. There things wouldn't go out of business. I mean, there's all kinds of things. One thing, and all of God's laws would solve so much of the problems in this world. And adversity, so again, we have to endure, but again, we can prevent a lot of it by following God's laws. Psalm 1. Psalm 1, verse 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the paths of sinners, nor seats in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. Day and night. This hasn't changed. If somebody tells you this has changed, they're not following God. They're not following Christ. Because you want to avoid problems, you want your life to work, you go to the Bible and you figure out people made mistakes for us in there. You learn from it. Learn from your own mistakes. Do what he says. And he says, if you meditate on the law day and night, you shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bring forth its fruit in the season, whose leaf also shall not wither. And whatever he does shall prosper. The godly are not so, but are like chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in their judgment, for sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. That's the wrong way. The wrong way. Joshua 1:8, I'm going to quote a few scriptures here, back all this up. Joshua 1:8, it just says, the book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. And that's where I fall short, where my problems come from. If I have problems, I got to get back and say, no, that's where my problems come from. I fell short. I didn't do all that was in it. He says, for then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. One last verse, Romans 12:2. Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove that is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Don't be conformed. Let's be transformed. Because we're all going to experience adversity. I don't know when, but we'll experience it. We've experienced it. It's part of the process. It's part of life. Two things, right? Two simple things. That's right. Make it simple. So, never give up. Conform to Jesus Christ and his law.